Here to talk about Black Lives Matter, the movement, the cultural revolution that's taking place, and what the church should be doing in this hour is New York Times best-selling author Eric Metaxas. You might be familiar with the name Eric Metaxas because he has his own radio program that is heard all across the country. Eric Metaxas, welcome back to the Values Voter Summit.
Tony, it's my privilege to be here. Thanks for asking me to be here.
Now, you wrote a book about 4 years ago, and I read it, If You Can Keep It, talking about our republic. And I'll have to say, if it came out today, it could not be more timely with what's happening in our country.
Look, I wish, I've said this many times, I wish I could give a copy of If You Can Keep It to every single American who can read, because it struck me at some point as an adult that I did not understand the basics of how self-government and American-style liberty works, and how virtue and faith are inextricably intertwined. It is not an add-on option. When I understood this, and then of course I understood you can't force people to have faith or virtue, right? That's what freedom is, that it's gotta come from people themselves. I thought, this is an extraordinary idea. My friend Os Guinness calls it the golden triangle of freedom. And if in my book, If You Can Keep It, I talk about the golden triangle of freedom. But I thought this is something that Americans have understood since the beginning of the Republic until roughly the last 50 years. And we have been going on fumes. We have ceased to understand what is necessary to remain truly free. And it's why we're in the mess we're in today. So I'm not joking. This is the kind of a book that I just wish I could get it in the hands of every high schooler, every college student. It's not complicated, but it's something we have not been teaching. We've not been learning. And if a people based on an idea, I mean, the American people, we're not an ethnic group. It's based on an idea, and everybody buys into this idea, and that's what America is. And I think that if those people don't understand the basics of those ideas and don't celebrate the heroes of our past who've given their lives, Nathan Hale and so many others, and don't really understand what it took to give us this level of freedom, we are doomed. And so it's why I felt led by God to write that book and to talk about the ideas in it wherever I go.
Well, Eric, when the book came out, I had you on my radio program. We talked about the book then, and there was a sense of urgency, and that's why you wrote the book, as you just described. But given what's happening right now, what we've seen in the last 6 months unfolding across America, are you concerned that we could very well lose the Republic?
Look, we could have lost it 4 years ago. Even if you hate Trump, you have to understand that we have as dramatic a choice today, even more so today than we did 4 years ago. If you do not have a president that believes in the basics, in the rule of law, in the sovereignty of nations, in borders, all the things that all Americans, left and right, have taken for granted, have agreed on since the beginning of the Republic, you lose everything. And the Democratic Party has sprinted away from what it once believed. JFK today would be a Republican or even a conservative. And so now you have a very, very dramatic choice. I thought when Trump was elected, it would only buy us time, and I was right. We've had some time. The so-called resistance has done everything they can to undermine him. And the one thing that they have done, which I find sort of comic, is that they have been more open about what they actually believe. In other words, the Marxist roots of many of their ideas have been exposed. And so when you have a group like BLM is a Marxist group. They do not care about Black lives. Marxists don't have any values. They don't have any transcendent authority to which they answer, and they're perfectly willing to lie if they can gain power. And they have gained tremendous power and gotten a lot of money by saying they care about Black lives and racial justice. Well, everything that they do, everything that they say on their website is precisely the opposite. They want to undermine the nuclear family. That is at the very heart of destroying Black communities across America. Senator Moynihan, a Democrat from New York, said that in 1965. If you really care about Black lives, you would oppose almost everything that Black Lives Matter has said. But again, they have hijacked the idea that Black Lives Matter, which everyone I know would agree with that, but they've hijacked that idea. They've created a Marxist movement, and they have very brilliantly and cynically co-opted many American evangelicals. There are many good American Christians who have bought into this idea, who don't understand that if you buy into their language of systemic racism and of white supremacy, once you buy into that language, you're dead. It's just what happened to the German church in the 30s. They thought, we'll go along with Hitler. They had no idea the death camps were ahead, but they said, well, he's saying some things, and we'll sort of allow the Nazi philosophy to infiltrate the church a little bit. We'll control it. It'll be okay. But what Bonhoeffer said is that if you get on a train going in the wrong direction, running along the corridor in the opposite direction is not going to help very much. And that anybody who loves God and who cares about racial harmony in America has to understand that Black Lives Matter, just like Antifa, stand for things that are utterly antithetical to racial harmony. Martin Luther King was a Christian. He spoke openly about using the Christian faith and Christian values and biblical values and American values, the promissory notes of the founding documents to further what was right. And many Americans could see that and eventually understood that, and he made progress. Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the radical left, they don't believe in God. They won't say that openly, and they will very happily use churches to further their agenda. So I am really grieved that a lot of people that I love, a lot of people who believe in what the Bible says, have been taken in by Marxists who are smart enough to know you don't declare very much that you're Marxist, because then people will run away. This is a real existential crisis in America. This is not just another election, Tony. And we have to wake up to precisely what the point is. We have a simple choice between a party that believes in the rule of law, that believes in the Constitution, that believes in virtue, that believes in duty and patriotism. And then we have a party that, I guess at this point, believes nothing except what will give them power, and then we will find out what they believe in. Just as Nancy Pelosi said, we've got to pass the bill before we know what's in it. That's really scary, and Americans need to understand what is at stake. This is not just another election.
Eric, very quickly, when you talk about the church and those that are responding to the Black Lives Matter movement, really out of fear, as if there was someone standing behind them with a club to beat them, they are responding in a way that is actually hurtful to the Black community, as you've talked about. So, given that fact, how should the church be responding at this moment?
Well, I would say that if you care about Black lives, and when we say Black lives, I mean, I really mean the urban poor. If you care about people in those communities, you have an obligation. You have an obligation before God to denounce socialism, anything to do with Marxism, because those economic policies, much less social policies and cultural policies, but those economic policies will harm Black lives in America. You have to vote for the party that believes in a robust, virtuous capitalism, which is the only way you can help any oppressed group or oppressed person, by giving them opportunities and jobs. That's the way this country has grown its wealth. That's the way this country has lifted innumerable people out of poverty. So as a Christian, you not only have an obligation to stand against Black Lives Matter and anything smacking of Marxism or socialism, but you have an obligation before God for the poor to do the right thing and to vote for those who value policies and will put in place policies that will enable people actually to flourish, not to simply to say that we're victims and that, you need to help us, but that we will give them the means to do that. I mean, I think this is a biblical charge to the church that we have an obligation to stand against the wickedness of Marxism, which is atheistic and which has never helped people, never on any level, and to vote for those candidates who believe in capitalism, in law and order, in the very things that, though flawed, have been what we have used to lift people out of poverty, to lift people into freedom and flourishing. I see it as an obligation. It's a duty the church has. It's not easy, but we really have to face this.
Agreed. Eric Metaxas, thanks so much for joining us at the Value Voter Summit.
My privilege, Tony. Thank you.
And folks, let me encourage you once again to take the challenge to pray, vote, and stand. Take the challenge.